the first time that I heard about you, and the reason that we kind of put you on our list to reach out to you was through the Bear Grease podcast. And you did an episode with Clay talking about the work that you've done up here in the Ozarks of Missouri. And specifically as it relates to that episode, he was talking about the importance of soil and how important that is to have good soil to maintain quality habitat as it relates to deer, wildlife, and other stuff like that. How did you kind of come to that conclusion, or what is your philosophy in general on habitat and soil when it comes to wildlife management?
So there's a lot of research that I knew in grad school, so long ago. One good colleague of mine, Dr. Harry Jacobson, really a pioneer in what I call advanced deer management, Mississippi State. He's long retired now. And Harry and some students did some work where they looked at the ecotones or habitat types in general across Mississippi. And some of them, were barrier islands, some the Mississippi Delta, uplands, timberland. And they took soil tests in all these different regions and just compared to the state. Mississippi does a fabulous job of collecting harvest data and antler size. So looked at soil, nutrients, and antler size. And there was a strong correlation. And that was, again, not, cutting edge. It was at the time, but not for now. But that got me thinking long ago. I was raised on a farm. And then right behind us, this big field you see behind that house over there, when Tracy and I bought this place, my wife Tracy, I wanted to make a food plot. And they'd fed cows out there. And that was just locust trees and Sericea lespedeza and cedars. It was just garbage, right?
Yeah, just totally neglected.
Yeah. And just exposed rock. I mean, just, when I say not big rock, but just fist-sized rock everywhere where the cow just stood there and rode it off the hillside. So I got all excited. Of course, I knew better than disc, right? It's just rock. And, wasn't going to do anything. So the county here rents a no-till drill even back then. So I got on the list, rent a no-till drill. I go up to MFA, Missouri Farmer Association, for those local folks, kind of our statewide farmers co-op. Bought some fertilizer. Just like the textbook, just like I learned in college, right?
Right.
You can see it's pretty steep out there. The guy makes one pass around the field, goes out the driveway. And Tracy and I are standing here, and I had, a few $100 of fertilizer back in the day in the back of the truck. I'm like, man, he must have flat tire or something. So I, shinny the guy down out there and say, what's it? I wouldn't drive my truck across that blankety-blank land for nothing. So this is going somewhere, not a rabbit trail. So I'm like, dang, that hurts. So he didn't give me credit for my fertilizer. So I hop my truck, go down to Berryville, Arkansas. It was the closest tractor dealer around here to buy a fertilizer spreader. I'm just going to put it on my tractor and, spread my own fertilizer.
Sure.
And I get down there and just absolutely know these people to the day. And there's a very calm Mennonite fella working there. And I'm riled up when I get there. I'm like, it's going to rain. I'm on my fertilizer break. And he's selling me that thing.
Yeah.
You're like, you need to just slow down, boy. I'm like, just sell it to me. Well, you just need to slow down. You're all excited. And I told him I was going on. He said, my Uncle Galen lives down the road. He's crazy. He'll drive anywhere, and he makes compost. Well, I'd heard of compost in college. Pretty good stuff. That's about all I knew about compost at the time. He literally takes off work, takes me down to meet Uncle Galen. Galen's a Mennonite, great guy. We're still buddies to today. Knew more about compost than I ever learned in college, tenfold over. It wasn't just compost. It was the microbes and what microbes do and how they interact with soil. Kind of well known now. It wasn't even a whisper back then.
How did he know it?
Galen was a man of the land, and he was taught by some of his fellow Mennonites about making compost. He's a poultry farmer in Berryville, a lot of chicken houses around there.
Yeah.
Instead of spreading that raw litter, they would compost it, take out all, superheat it by pouring it on each other, builds heat, kill all the bad microbes, pathogens, whatever, and then put in or inoculate with healthy microbes that should be naturally occurring in the soil. Fascinating process.
He just lived around it so much that it's like, this is exactly what you need to do for your property. Okay.
And so Galen said, and I told Galen, well, it's a lot cheaper to hire you than it is to buy that stainless steel fertilizer spreader. Come on up. And sure enough, I mean, Galen's a close friend. I admire Galen, but he's crazy. He'll drive that slope. And I tried to ride with him once. I was so scared. I said, let me out of the truck, buddy. I'm not riding anymore. So that was my introduction to, let's say this, reintroducing life to the soil. And we think of life as, deer, elk, bear. I'm talking microbes. And under most acres of soil on the planet, there's more weight of microbes than if there was an elephant standing on it. I mean, they're everything.
Wow.
I did not know that.
I didn't either till, again, Galen. So, and then I started studying more and more. I'll take it one step further. I was a naturalist at Yellowstone in summer, a couple summers. Fascinating job. My job was to teach school teachers about wildlife and forestry because, if you can have an impact at a first, second, third grader, it may stick with them for life. And so it's a great program sponsored by Fire Club International. It's called AWLS, American Wilderness Leadership School. And, of course, we worked into need for hunting, buffalo overpopulating the park, destroying habitat, whatever. But I'd watch these buffalo move through, and, man, they would trample, urinate, defecate, salivate, and move on. And then it would grow back really lush.
Right.
No one adding lime, fertilizer, And that kind of got me going. And just a sequence of events like that, to abbreviate, led to where I am today of understanding microbes. We use no synthetic fertilizer. If you look at that field, it's pretty dark green. We're in a drought right now, and it's about 6 foot tall. If we walked out there, sun hip and 700 species growing. It hadn't seen fertilizer in 9 years now.
Wow.
And this is the Ozarks, folks. Yeah. Shallow, rocky soil. In that field, we've built about 6 inches of black soil on top of the rocks. And I was taught in college, it takes 1,000 years for rock to turn to soil. And I think that's true. If we left a rock here on this table in front of us and, no microbes really involved,
sure,
it probably would take a long time. Who knows what 1,000 years is? I don't think any human really knows that, but it'd take a long time.
Yeah.
But in a
to add how much soil? Sorry,
an inch.
An inch for 1,000 years.
But in a relatively short time, we've built about 6 inches out there.
6 inches.
Yeah, just by letting plants and microbes and deer, primarily deer, salivate, urinate, defecate. Because, in a deer's rumen, where they're digesting their food, you take a teaspoon out of that first big paunch. They don't have 4 stomachs. They have 1 stomach with 4 chambers. And you take a teaspoon of that, they have about 1 trillion microbes in there. And average-sized deer salivates about 2 gallons a day, because they're regurgitating their food and that whole process of a ruminant. So they're just adding microbes like crazy. When they walk across that field, if you look at a deer, you really zoom in your camera and watch it, it's dripping saliva about everywhere it goes. They're nasty little rascals.
And all of that is going back into the soil. And in the microbes, you're saying they're living organisms.
Absolutely living. We say microbes because people freak out and you say bacteria. They're bacteria.
Okay.
We're always told, wash your hands, you get some bacteria on you, Well, human body has about 4 pounds of bacteria, and if we don't have it, we die quickly. Mm-hmm. So not all microbes are bad, and not all insects are bad. Insects, There's about 1,700 species of beneficial insects for ag farmers, food plotters, whatever, to one pest. And a lot of those beneficial species are predators. But when we spray in an insecticide, it's rarely selective. So we kill the good stuff with the bad, and the bad gets a leg up and keeps going because it had that natural control out there. So no herbicide, no fungicide, no insecticide. And I'll put amazement on here that I think a lot of hunters can relate to. So right over here is the Stone and Taney County line. We're split. And counties are big in Missouri, and they're laid out. It was about a 15-mile ride to the county seat from here in the county. That was considered a one-horseback day. So anyone need to be able to get to the county seat in one day. A little history here. So county's about 30 miles. I mean, pretty big county, right? So I'm split by 2 counties, goes right through that valley, right through the middle of the property. And when Trace and I purchased this place, I looked it up. Now, back in the day, if you killed a pretty good deer, Pope Young, Boone and Crockett, most people registered. Not true now because everyone's hung up on net score, gross score order. But back in the day, you just registered it. And when we bought this property, I looked it up, and the record book deer, I'm not saying there wasn't any bigger, but the biggest one ever recorded was a 131. Well, we've harvested 170-inch deer.
Oh, my gosh.
No deer moved in, just good habitat work, good groceries, letting deer get a little older.
That's that soil correlating with antler growth.
Part of it, yeah. Part of that. People were shooting deer when they were young. My first deer I killed was a button buck. Second deer I killed was a button buck. Maybe third, fourth, I don't remember, So. But anyway, let them get a little age.
Yeah. Okay, I'm gonna go back. I want to hear about where are you from, like originally, and how did you kind of go the route of? You said you were a naturalist in Yellowstone.
Yeah.
What did you study in school? I know obviously you have your PhD now. Like, let's just kind of start from ground zero, if you don't mind.
Yeah,
where'd you grow up?
Just 45 minutes to an hour from here, just right on the edges of Ozark Plateau, not quite this deep, at a little town called Republic, Missouri. By that town, I was out in the country, raised on about 100-acre farm, and typical farm back day, 2-acre patch of milo, fence row was getting bigger, everybody mad at fence row was getting bigger, and then a little patch of corn, a little patch of watermelons. Awesome, in hindsight, awesome wildlife habitat. And quail everywhere. I grew up quail rabbit hunting because there were no deer in the county where I was raised, Greene County. Western Greene County had no deer. And I don't know, I wish I could remember, but I heard at the barbershop or somewhere, they're going to restock deer. Someone told me or whatever, and I was like, man, just to see a deer. I remember it so clearly. I was in first grade, and I was running my big trap line like a Yukon trapper.
Yeah.
It was just box traps, little rabbit, box traps, mouse scrap, barnwood, whatever. And I had to do my chores first in the winter. It used to be cold and snow back then. And I'd run my trap line. And I was running my trap line. My dad hadn't left for work yet. And I found a female fawn, one of these little fields, shot in the head, been poached. And ever since that moment, I've just been fascinated with deer and really disliked lawbreakers, especially in relation to wildlife. Mm-hmm. I mean, passionately dislike them. And so I'm of an age, I'm 62, I don't mind saying, boys my age want to be in an army or a policeman, all great professions. I just want to work for deer. Deer biologist wasn't a word then. Game warden, whatever. I just want to work with deer.
Yeah, be outside, be around deer.
Yeah, so all through high school, I was that weirdo. What are you going to do when you grow up, Grant? I want to work with deer. No one works with deer. I'm going to work with deer. And promptly went to college up here at Springfield. It used to be called SMS. It was known as a teacher's college. First guy to go to college. So, I just thought, just went to college. I know different colleges specialize in different things.
Oh, yeah.
And little typical story, little kid from great family, country boy, probably a little overprotected, goes to the city, gets in trouble, and I still have a great record. I made a .67 out of 4.0. I got kicked out of school. Not put on probation. I got kicked out of school.
Less than 1.67?
Yeah, like less than one, yeah. Thank goodness for tennis. I made a C in tennis. Thank goodness for tennis, yeah.
Oh, my goodness.
I just didn't show up for class. I will say, to be fair to myself, still today, hunted all over, been very blessed. The biggest turkey I've ever killed in my career was that spring. Also, the first turkey I ever killed.
Because you were skipping class.
All the time. And I caught more white bass that spring than I probably have any 10 years since then.
Oh, my gosh. That's hilarious.
And you still ended up with a PhD, so
Somehow.
I think you're doing okay.
Good parents. Good parents and God's blessing. Yeah, good parents.
That's amazing.
Yeah, never give up on your kids, yeah. But anyway, and so I stumbled through undergrad somehow, and my roommate, Terry Pattison, was actually a football player and defensive back. And he would go to football study hall 6 nights a week. So after I failed out of school, I'd go to I was the smallest guy in football study hall. I'd go to football study hall, and then we have one night off and didn't hunt quite as much. And if you try it all school, it's easy. I made great grades from them. And I'd heard about these things called computers. And Terry's going to take computer class. And I said, everybody needs to know a little bit about computers. Well, I have a real logic brain. So I was like an easy A. And I've been married the same woman for decades, folks. This is not teasing or anything, but literally there were girls on that side of campus, the business school. In the biology building back then, there weren't many girls. So
bunch of dudes.
Yeah. So I said, hey, I'll take another class with you. So I ended up getting a degree in computers and in biology, zoology, to run the wildlife degree there. And while I was doing that, I worked in Elko, Nevada for the BLM, Bureau of Land Management. Got to be careful anymore. Bureau of Land Management. Volunteered one summer, $25 a week. That covered your meals, laundry, gas, everything. And just blessed to have two great bosses, a fisheries biologist and a wildlife biologist that were good men, good biologists. And they took me from that academic point of view to boots on the ground, which is held to me to today.
Yeah.
And we was out in the mountains studying mule deer winter range in the summer. How much food is there? How do we set hunting seasons based on amount of food? That kind of stuff. Real tangible work, which I just was fascinated with.
I have to think that sticks with you so much more than just reading something in a book, but actually going out into the field, applying it, looking at it, touching it, feeling it. It has to stick with you so much more, right?
I would tell everyone, whatever profession you're in, bricklayer, truck driver, wildlife biologist, doctor, do, apprenticeship, internship, whatever. Get in there. We offer internships. No money. It just costs us money. No money being made. Because how much that impacted my life. And we have a new young man from New York starting tomorrow. Be here for a year.
All right.
Yeah, Matthew. Go get him, Matthew.
Shout out to Matthew.
Yeah. And I hope you make it because not all interns do. So, Matthew, work hard.
You got work to do, Matthew.
Yeah. So I got back. There were no jobs wildlife, not being political, Carter president, interest rates 18%, wildlife's a discretionary income field still today.
Sure.
I was a really good computer programmer. I sent out one resume, Southwestern Bell for AT&T, bought all the regional bells, got a job like that, COBOL programmer, moved to St. Louis, downtown. I didn't even know how to dress. I had to wear a tie every day. I didn't even know how to dress. this is how country I was. Of course, I rode a van pool. I lived out at Creve Coeur Lake for you St. Louis people because they had a bow range and I could fish. And I'm like, my gosh, who would live any closer? That was 45 minutes away. Who would live any closer to St. Louis?
Just so you could be out there.
Just
doing
so
that stuff.
on weekends, yeah, shoot my recurve bow and fishing, yeah, my Zebco fishing rod probably, and I've been there about a year. Hadn't taken any vacation. Very good worker, conservative guy. And my boss from Nevada, we stayed in touch. He called me up early one morning for his time, just kind of joking, said, "Why don't you quit that high-paying job, come back out and have some fun?" And at noon, I wrote out on the old green and white computer paper my 2-week notice and walked out the front door without telling anyone. Because I had 2 weeks of vacation. That's my 2-week notice.
Yeah.
Loaded up my Datsun, for you those old enough pickup, little 5-speed 4-cylinder Datsun, precursor to Nissan.
They definitely don't make those.
Yeah,
No, I don't make those
thing.
anymore. Put my best fly rod, my Black Widow recurve bow, my Coleman camper stove, and my sleep bag in my truck. Called my parents, so I've quit my job, which they thought was crazy, of course, once again. Yeah. And drove to Nevada and knocked on the door, said, "I sure hope you got that job you talk about." Folks, don't be scared. Take a chance to follow your passion.
Seriously, talk about some faith.
Now, you got passion. I mean, you just can't, I want to do this summer. That don't work. And so they gave me a summer job, but halfway through the summer said, "Hey, Grant, we have no budget for this. So we just kind of winged it on you. You got to get a job, son." So in that day, probably still today, if you got nothing to do, you either go to grad school or be a real estate agent. Well, I didn't want to be a real estate agent, so I started calling around. It's midsummer. Everyone had given all their scholarships away. Called back to school like, went to here. So we've got no money in biology, but they need computer teachers, and you got a year of real-world experience, which was big back then. So I taught computers to pay my way for my master's. And I did it on scrape behavior about 20 miles this way. And I shared off camera a little bit earlier that I was speaking in Kansas City. They called the school and said, "Hey, you got anyone? We have a Safari Club International banquet. Just need someone to talk about wildlife for 15, 20 minutes. Only kid we got doing anything on game animals is Grant. He's working on scrape behavior. Send him up." And I had a chunky little, $2,000 handy cam, which wasn't even called that back in the day. It was horrible. Cost more and horrible.
Yeah.
And a battery about the size of a Caterpillar battery.
Would it last you like 30 minutes?
Yeah,
at a
probably.
time?
Yeah. You'd get a sweat up going out there.
Yeah.
Didn't have no money for budget, so I just climbed trees and sat on limbs. No safety harness or anything. I mean, God's with me because I should be dead. And I'd filmed some deer using scrapes. I don't know if anyone ever filmed deer using scrapes at that time. And somehow some shop in town helped us convert those to still images because all we had was 35 mm slides, no PowerPoint. Went up there, give my presentation. Everyone's really fancy dressed. I'm still indebted to Safari Club International. Certainly indebted to them, but that wasn't my crowd, right? I mean, they all killed elephants and all stuff. I'm killing button bucks,
Yeah.
And I sat down just nervous. And about 10, 11-year-old kid comes up and said, "My dad wants to talk to you in the hallway." Like, "Oh, man, I've boogered up here. Man, I've offended someone." And I go out there and guy says, "Hey, I liked your presentation. Your technique's kind of crude, but I like it. And, hey, by the way, I'm a big hunter, and I'm an infrared engineer." I didn't know what that meant. "And I've come up with this camera that a deer will trip and take a picture of itself if everything works right." Well, that's the first trail camera. And
Wow.
I couldn't hardly believe it. That'd be like thinking, "Grant, you're flying to Jupiter or something." I couldn't hardly believe that. So I got my address, gave my address to him, and a couple weeks later I got a box in the mail and opened it up, and oh my gosh, little note, "Call me and you get this." And that company was called Trail Master, and it was active infrared. There was a sender and a receiver. So, and you had a 36 film roll picture. You didn't waste any.
When you say active, a receiver and a sender, that's like two, like a garage door where you have a laser beam going across and it bounces back. Okay.
Yeah. And if something broke that beam, you could kind of adjust the sensitivity a little bit, not much.
Gotcha.
It would take pictures.
Okay.
So
you'd set something on one end and then have the camera on the other.
Pointed at it.
Got it.
I mean, you're out in the woods, right? Trees are never level. They look leveled or not,
Right.
It was so crude, but it was state of the art.
That's the first one ever.
Yeah.
First trail camera.
That we know, or people around me know.
Yeah.
There's actually a guy just called me from Europe writing a book about trail cameras, and he gives us also credit for being the first.
Oh, cool.
And anyway, so I did good research, got my thesis published. The big stud meeting in the deer world is called the Southeastern Deer Study Group. And it's still today the biggest meeting about whitetail deer, period, bar none. People even out of Southeast, North, whatever, come to that. It's the meeting. And I'm so nervous, little, pointy-head graduate student from nothing school, Texas A&M, University of Georgia, big stud powerhouse wildlife school, Mississippi State. And but I had these slides, which no one ever seen, right? Turns out does use scrapes more than bucks, and button bucks use them all the time and all this stuff. We take for you guys, yeah, but no one knew that back then.
Right.
And so it was a big time publication, not boasting. It was the technology, not me. And to tell you how much I'm not boasting, of course, I started getting offers to go on, you know.
Sure.
I'm thinking, man, I'm good.
I'm a big shot now.
They didn't want me. They just wanted those trail cameras because you couldn't buy them. I had 6 of them. They just wanted the 6 I had. They didn't care anything about me.
Sure, yeah.
And got selected, went to the University of Georgia on I already had a master's, but a master's PhD track program.
Okay.
Use those cameras longer. And doing my research on a plantation in South Carolina on rub behavior, great big rubs. Like we didn't call it a rub unless you could climb a tree stand. Big rubs. And that was due to, I didn't know it at that time, but a really aggressive deer herd. That's one of the first quality deer management deer herds in that part of the South. And they were shooting as many bucks as does, letting bucks get older. So, of course, you get bigger rubs. But
sure.
We didn't know why at the time. Oh, my gosh, these deer, Frankenstein, they rub big trees here.
Yeah.
And did research on that. Going great, slamming it. And Hurricane Hugo's this storm out in the ocean. Where I'm from, Missouri, hurricane. Got a little closer, like it's going to come in Charleston. I'm 17 miles out of Charleston, South Carolina, right up the river on this plantation. And I saw I go to plantation manager, wasn't that much older than me. I said, hey, man, you think I ought to leave, go back to university? I'd be like a bad thunderstorm and get here. I don't know if you remember Hurricane Hugo, but it broke our wind gauge at 176 miles an hour and leveled most of the forest, leveled it. I could barely find my cameras under the 5,000 rubs I had marked and were studying, following. I found like 4.
Wow.
So right in the middle of my program, I had to shift. And very cool. Joe Hamilton, still buddies, was a wildlife biologist for the state of South Carolina. Great guy, ahead of his time, way ahead of his time. He started the Quality Deer Management Association, now known as the National Deer Association. Joe was way ahead of his time. Very artsy guy, very poetic guy. And he was working on plantations. Say, hey, you can just shift your work over here. They were also doing some good work. And that plantation, by the way, is where the movie Forrest Gump was filmed, or a big part with that oak tree, the old house.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I was there when they were filming that.
No way.
Yeah. I'm really mad at them because I had this great big buck. We called it the magnolia buck. Deer don't rub on magnolia trees a lot, but this buck rubbed on magnolia trees. And I knew when I'd find the magnolia rubbed, I knew it was that buck.
Yeah.
And I'd published in Deer and Deer Hunting magazine about this buck because it had pictures and all the stuff, And one of the set guys that, got set ready early in the morning, coming early in the morning, ran over that buck.
No way.
Yep. And literally, Joe dug a hole and buried that buck. I was back at campus by then with a copy of the most recent Deer and Deer Hunting magazine that had his pictures in that magazine with that buck. Joe's a real cool guy.
So the magnolia buck is buried on the Forrest Gump set.
Yep.
Somewhere.
Oh yeah, I could tell you that house. It was in the movie. If you're interested, guys, they just built that just for the movie and then tore it down and resoldered the yard.
Oh, no way.
Really?
And there were air conditioners about the size of a vehicle out back. It was just a facade. And
just for the movie.
Only rooms finished were the ones they filmed in, and that was it. That log, they're sitting on fishing at the end. I've sat on that log many times.
Wow.
Yeah, before the movie.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah. Now you got paid to sit there, but anyway, no, I'm teasing. Anyway, so had to transfer due to the hurricane to Clemson Tigers, and Dave Gwynn, Larry Marchson. Dr. Larry Marchson was my professor at Georgia. He stayed on my committee at Clemson, and they gave me a long leash because we were doing cutting-edge stuff, and that's where I really spread my wings. And here's a little story for you. Am I okay? Because I'm just rolling here.
No, you're great, man. This is good.
So this is just a lesson for y'all. Just live life right. Literally, I'm serious as I can be. So I was that good student. I mowed. I used to have to pay a nickel for pencils. I didn't steal pencils, and I paid for my copies. Used to have to put a nickel in a little basket by copy machine in the secretary's office and make copies. Well, if she was gone, a lot of people would make copies. I didn't. Secretary liked me. When little timber companies call in, had a project, something that wasn't big enough for the professors to work on, say, hey, we got this PhD student, might be able to help you. And that's kind of how I started consulting. Some lucky breaks, blessings on the way, a lot of cool stuff. And by the time I graduated, I had, pretty good client list. And I said, man, I'm having fun. I'm going and doing hands-on, just like Nevada, boots on the ground, helping landowners all throughout the Whitetails range. I've been in New Zealand. I've been in Canada. Daniel's just in Canada working. I want to sit in a classroom, or I want to go do this.
Right.
There was no master plan. Everything's, boy, Grant had his master plan.
Yeah.
I was just following my passion.
Just doing what you wanted to do at the time.
Just following passion. And I think there's a lot to that. Your passion's not something, illegal or something.
Sure.
Following your passion can take you a long ways.
Yeah.
And through all that process, and the hundreds of landowners I've been so blessed to work with and failing so many times. I tell people now, I've made every mistake a minimum of 5 times, some 10 or 20. Hopefully I'm out of mistakes now. When I come to lay out your property or recommend timber stand improvement or whatever we're doing, I'm probably getting pretty close to not having that many more big mistakes.
Yeah. So you're pretty dialed in now. I mean, you've spent the time, you've put in the boots on the ground work, you've done the research, you've really put together this holistic picture of like, this is what I've seen work, this is what I know works and what I've observed. And that's kind of how you came to the philosophy. I'm trying to connect it back to where we started on soil. Is that kind of the journey that you took there?
Yeah, a long journey. I mean, I've bought and had other people buy tons, I'm sure thousands of tons of fertilizer and lime and all that stuff, but just tweaking. And I want to say this right now. I owe such a debt to the people that allowed me to help them because I learned so much from them. I'm old. I don't need to brown nose anyone. I mean, I'll just tell you that. We would fail or they would try this. They'd say, Grant, I want to do my own thing on this food plot or, whatever it was. And we just learned so much through that trial and error that you just can't do in a university setting because we were, like I said, working north to south. No grad student is blessed to have that budget or freedom.
Right.
Because they got to stick within their study guide. We have a design study, which they should. And, we're going to state a hypothesis. We're going to state how we're going to test this hypothesis. We're going to test it with the appropriate test, and we're going to publish our results with no bias. That's how it should work. Mm-hmm. When you're a landowner, it's like, wonder what happens when we try 4 times more seed than we should,
Let's throw some money at this thing and see what happens.
Yeah, yeah.
When you think about the Ozarks and applying everything that you've learned to the Ozarks, how do you consider our habitat when you go into a new property and it's mostly been kind of left alone or just left up to nature and when I say left up to nature, knowing that certain invasives have probably been introduced that have now taken over. Like, how do you see the Ozarks as a whole and then break apart the strategy for how to manage?
I'm flip that on you just a little bit.
Okay.
I'm a big reader. And one of the things I love to read is the early explorers. Everyone thinks Lewis and Clark, and that's certainly valid. Daniel Boone, that's awesome. He spells like I do. He wrote a lot, but he didn't spell too good. But there's an explorer right here, just 20 miles this way, Beaver Creek, a guy named Schoolcroft, and he was looking for lead mines when there were just trappers in this area. And he kept a journal, like Lewis and Clark, but, not as near as well-known, shorter. And so I've been reading those and fascinated by them. So we have an accurate view of what our habitat looked like. And I've been through all these cycles. I mean, I still got textbooks somewhere. I just donated a whole bunch of college research. I still got a few about soil science and pH and adding fertilizer and how much fertilizer and balancing all these issues. And through these, Schoolcroft, he talks about just a multitude of bison and deer and elk right here in the Ozarks. I mean, just right over here,
Wow, yeah.
And some of these early explorers talk about they loved it because they could ride their horse through the timber. Think about this in the Ozarks. And never knock the hat off their head. You almost can't do that anywhere.
Yeah,
no.
Seriously.
Go down to Buffalo River Wilderness area. You can ride a horse anywhere, and the trees are over 2 feet, right?
Yeah.
When you guys drove up here, there's a cedar tree all over the highway or whatever.
We were just baiting a bear the other day, going through the trails, and all the trees are overgrown. Literally knocked my hat off, and I was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
But that's a great example.
So this area was mainly oak savannas or balds. You've heard of the bald knobbers, a group of vigilantes based out of Branson area here. Bad guys back in Civil War day. But they were named balds because they met on these grassy southwest slopes. There was nothing but grass, bald. Well, those are the hottest part, right? Sun really bakes down in the afternoon on those trees didn't grow. And those are all grasses and forbs. Incredible wildlife habitat. Mm-hmm. European settlers got here. Of course, they're going to fence that off, try to stop wildfire, put their cows on there. And that's all. If you see cedars now, they're mainly on those southwest facing slopes. Cedars are real drought hardy. Cattle don't eat cedars. So they selected 4 cedars. And that's a huge issue. Mm-hmm. The NRCS is doing a great job giving cost share out to restore native habitat in this Ozarks area. And landowners can get quite a bit of money to fell all those cedars and burn it. And in my place, we have felled hundreds of acres of cedars and burned. And state biologists and NRCS biologists and biologists from NGOs, nonprofit wildlife groups, and myself have identified 176 native species of grasses and forbs. I didn't plant any of them.
That are all coming up since you got rid
they're
of
in
cedars.
the soil.
Wow.
I got rid of cedar and introduced a lot of fire.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of fire. I've had fire departments from many places respond to fire here. None of them ever got out. No one's ever got hurt. But, you got to cook one every now and then.
Yeah, they're like, oh, Grant's burning again up
they
there.
Do.
We
they
got to
do.
go check him out.
The sheriff's office calls us all the time, yeah.
Yeah.
I call that dropping a match and letting new habitat hatch.
New habitat hatch.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah. But you got to open up that canopy. Burning under closed canopy hardwood forest isn't doing anything. Just remove a little leaflet.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I want to talk burn strategy and some of the how to do it type stuff. But my question, my dad was talking about this, I don't know, maybe a year ago, and he's followed your channel forever. I remember when we first started doing food plots on our little property in Arkansas thinking, how are we going to do this? We've never done this before. And he's like, well, I got this YouTube channel. And this was, I guess, when YouTube was starting to get really cool. Anyway, long story to say, cedars, and you can correct me because you will know, don't they produce something in the soil that messes up the microbes and the microbiome and the carbon that kills other plants around it? Or is it just that they grow so dense and
they just shade it out?
Okay.
And their needles make a thick carpet.
So nothing can grow up under them. So they're just
a couple of
terrible.
negatives of cedars are 40% of the moisture, on average, hits a cedar. It goes into the cedar or evaporates off. It's literally changed our watersheds.
Cedar trees have changed the watershed.
Yeah, because 40% of the water that used to percolate through the soil is now staying in a cedar tree or evaporating back into the air.
Okay.
That's a big
number, right?
Huge.
Yeah.
Now, that's where there's cedars. That's not 40% everywhere, right? My yard isn't 40%, right? Oklahoma publishes, state of Oklahoma publishes, that statewide, they lose an average of about 700 acres a day. Now, this is based on satellite images, and, you don't see 700 acres in one place, but just watching cedar encroachment over the state, really sophisticated analysis, they think they're losing an average of 700 acres a day year-round
to
cedars.
No way.
So it's a massive issue, folks. I believe that we are doing a horrible job of managing the habitat we have, and the best plan we can have is restore native habitat. Because when you read these early explorers, they're seeing way more critters, abundant critters than anyone sees now. And everyone says, yeah, there wasn't any development. Well, I'm managing a relatively small place compared to Stone Taney County, and I've made a difference on deer size, turkey numbers. We have an awesome amount of turkeys. Awesome. In savanna habitat, raccoons don't thrive. You reduce those nest predators just by managing for savanna habitat. I love turkey hunting, so I manage for savannas, and we trap every legal day we can.
You do. I was going to ask you about trapping and how much you put an emphasis on that, because I hear a lot of people say, or I've heard this in the past, that habitat is so prime and important that you really you don't even need to. I don't know if it's said that you don't need to focus on predators, but basically saying you can't trap your way out of a bad habitat.
I totally disagree. Again, I've had clients north, south, east, west. I got some clients don't do the habitat so much, but they trap with super intensity. Some states allow year-round trapping.
Right.
And you would die to turkey hunt there. You would really want to turkey hunt there. The best is both, and habitat is super important. But let's look at it this way. Turkeys live in poultry houses by the tens of thousands.
Sure.
Few die. You put a coon in there one night, how many you think would die?
A lot.
A lot.
10, 20, 30.
Oh, or hundreds because they're flying in the windows, getting away from them, all this stuff.
Yeah.
Today, I read it, maybe it's out earlier. Today, I read, we published several years ago about neonics. 95% of seed corn sold in America has this really wicked insecticide on the coating. If you've ever got seed, and I'm not picking anyone from NWTF or NDA or any other great nonprofits out there, and again, I'm not picking, I'm like a Silver Life member of NWTF. I'm member 18 of QDMA or NDA. So I can speak.
Yeah.
Because I'm there. I'm a brother.
Yeah.
When you get,
you're in the family.
Yeah. When you get free corn or dollar bag corn that's purple or green or whatever, the reason you got that is because a big corn producer did not want to pay the tipping fees, pay to have that put in a landfill. It's cheaper to give it away. And that coating is so toxic. They can't just dump it out. It can't be used for beef feed or cattle feed or anything like that. And the first line, federally mandated on that label says, danger, don't feed the wildlife. I have pictures of it. Yet most people to get that are broadcasting, and the turkeys are out there next day, they're eating all my seed up. And NWTF just come out today. They're sponsoring a new research project. I got a lot of heck when I first published this a few years ago. You can check the channel. We published neonics are bad. When you're killing turkeys, you open up a crop and it's full of green or orange or purple seed. That's poison they're ingesting.
Oh, man. Yeah.
A lot of it. Neonic is a nicotinoid, nicotine. We used to dart deer way back in the day with nicotine is so cruel. We didn't know any better. It just paralyzes you. Deer's those eyeballs looking at you, just paralyzes them. So it paralyzes these little insects. Well, your little poult run around, and an insect, it's a big enough a neonics that it's kind of fluttering on the ground. That's like wiggling, a June bug in front of a bluegill. What do you think that poult's doing? Because they live off insects. Those are the easiest ones to catch.
Right.
They're getting a super dose. And so they just studied that maybe it's not infertility in the eggs. Oh, we got to save these old gobblers. Young gobblers are infertile. I met teenagers that were infertile, right? We got super high pregnancy rates. I'm just being honest here. Okay, so that theory doesn't hold any water whatsoever. At least not totally. But it turns out neonics may be causing these eggs to not be fertilized.
Interesting.
Just a theory right now. Let me say this so clearly. But gosh, and there's even better insecticides. There's a better way to do this. People thought planting fescue in the Ozarks was good. What's a catastrophic event?
Yeah.
Everyone says, we had no quail anymore. I grew up quailing. We had no quail anymore. Well, baby quail's about the size of a bumblebee. It can't walk through a fescue field. It's dead on sight.
Too thick.
Yeah, dead on sight. Little turkey poult, have a hard time going through all that stuff.
Yeah. So talking about turkeys and talking about trapping, and as you're talking about insecticides here with neonics, maybe break down some of your other broader philosophies, like how you approach management on land. You talked a little bit about fire, just some strategies there, and kind of breaking apart, like how much do you focus on trapping, burning, species, letting the sunlight come through, TSI, all the stuff that I know you focus on.
I would agree with the mass of podcasts out there that say habitat's number one.
Okay.
I disagree that trapping's a closer number two than a lot of people say.
Okay.
You can make a difference trapping. Again, the advantage of doing this, we've been incorporated 33 years, working for we incorporated and having all these clients all throughout. I've walked these properties. I've been blessed to turkey hunt these properties. Those people want to remain nameless for obvious reasons, but it works, period. Mm-hmm. If you combine habitat work and trapping like we have here, you end up with a super population.
Yeah.
And it's fun. I like standing on the ground hearing 20 turkeys gobble.
Oh.
I mean, I don't mind that one bit.
I don't mind that.
I would love that.
Yeah. So it's fun. We have 900 acres roughly working with now, 870-something, and we removed 139 nest predators last year, coons, possums, skunks. That doesn't sound, that's okay. What you don't know is we removed 115 the year before. So I do agree with everyone who says trapping is hard work.
Yeah.
And it's do it every year because juvenile males are going to move in. You create a vacuum. Deer are not territorial. They don't make scrapes, rubs, and mark territory. They don't do that at all. Predators, almost all predator species, are extremely territorial. You see coyote poop on the road, they're probably marking the boundary of their territory. Coon, same way. And so you create a void, they're moving in. We lobbied hard to get the MDC, Missouri Department of Conservation, to extend the trapping season closer to nesting season because those are the most important nest predators you can take off. Now, will we ever be 100%? No, because the federal birds, hawks and owls, they're protected. They take their share. Crows take their share. Snakes, I read a paper recently where it was done in South Summer. There are more rat snakes, big black snakes, rat snakes now than they ever recorded for because our habitat didn't manage like it used to. We don't rip a fire through it all the time, stuff like that. So there's a lot of things on a turkey sandwich or turkey egg. Can we make improvements unequivocally? Will we ever be perfect? No, I doubt it was. Daniel Boone wrote in his journal that when he went across Kentucky, there was never a day he didn't hear turkeys gobbling.
Wow.
How many people have a season, they go, boy, I didn't hear any turkeys gobble all season long.
Yeah, all season.
Daniel heard them all year round.
Yeah.
So savanna habitats, a lot of fire. If you own land, state agency, federal agency for wildlife, I think we should focus on replicating the habitat that was here pre-settlement. And it's easy to do. Well, how do we know that? Well, there's no Google Earth. There's these people that wrote these books. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the best we can go on. I think they're pretty accurate.
Yeah.
How quickly have you seen some of the improvements happening on properties from start date to when you're getting reports back going, this is working? I'm talking deer, turkey, quail, bear, whatever people may be going for.
Yeah, heaven forbid we do bear, right? They're big, nasty raccoon.
They do, yeah.
Teasing. My buddies are bear hunters. So we have a property right now in South Carolina. He's been on our show a lot because the guy's got 500 acres. He bought it. It was a gnarly old pine stand and some weeded up ag fields. There was not much redeeming about, to tell you the truth. And the guy bought it. He'd never owned property before. One place for him and his family to hunt. There've been some leases. It's highly eroded red clay. There's nothing that looks even resembles black dirt. It's just solid red clay. We're almost 3 years into it. If he doesn't kill a boo daddy buck this year, I'll be shocked.
Man.
And turkeys, Daniel and I were not really turkey hunting. We were working / let's throw the shotgun in the buggy. And heck, I don't know, we saw 50 turkeys that day.
No way.
Not really trying to hunt, although it's awful tempting for me.
Oh, I'm sure it is.
I'm supposed to be focused on writing my notes here. Was that a gobble I heard over there?
Just write it in the contract. Part of the management fee is we get to take a turkey as we're working.
We get a spring hunt.
George has been on our show a lot. George is down in Texas. We can talk about here too. And his dad had planted 2,800 acres in pines. So close camp before us and I got there. I said, George, we got to cut a bunch of trees. We need to make a bunch of food plots. It's a pretty big project. And he'd always disc. We've showed he had like 5 discs sitting out there now, what we call a boneyard. And I got George talked into using our process. We call it the release process, releasing creation's potential. And thinned the timber and did a lot of burning. George done kill a 180 this year, I'll be shocked. Now, he used to kill 180s before Dad planted all this land. That's been closed canopy forever, and they're just disgusted. They're about to give up hunting.
Yeah.
And now they're in the game.
Yeah.
So, and this is Texas. So much in the game that George says he's not putting out any more protein feeders. Because you don't need to.
There's just that much food on the ground.
A lot of native plants test out more than 20% crude protein. Why would you pay for someone else? Do you think about that? Harvest it, sell it, someone buys it, probably modifies it, puts it in a pellet, whatever, bags it, ships it, then it gets, that's wholesale, then gets retail. Or you can just grow it by dropping some matches and killing some trees. And it's more drought proof, right?
It's native.
Yeah. And you don't have a bunch of deer licking out of a little tube feeder.
Right.
All right. Not just CWD. I mean, there's a lungworm, gutworm, all these, a lot of parasites. We don't know each other that well. If I licked on my Andy's ice cream, passed you the spoon, you probably wouldn't want to lick on it, right?
Probably wouldn't do it.
Yeah. Well, we want our wildlife doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just a congregation of saliva and just an opportunity for disease to spread.
Yeah. Yeah. Of a lot of diseases.
Sure.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you about, as it relates to, you mentioned a no-till drill earlier, and why you go that route versus a plow. Because a lot of people, even a couple years ago, even with all the resources out there, sometimes you just kind of miss something or you don't know. We were going to do a food plot. We plowed it up. We turned up the soil and all that stuff, and we planted a food plot. But now, having watched your channel and learned a little bit more, I realize there's a different way. Why do you go the no-till drill route?
Yeah, so again, God never dissed land, right? The buffalo went over using buffalo, could have been elk, whatever, and maybe turned it a little bit with their hoof, half-inch deep, killed some plants, whatever, just compaction, trampling. No-till drills allow you to just make a little slice in the ground and drop a seed in. When you when you plow, disc, cultivate, all these names out there, you expose that soil to a huge amount of oxygen, the atmosphere.
Okay.
Well, pre-settlement again, the only air getting there is going down a wormhole. Did y'all know the earthworms were imported? They weren't here originally, right?
No, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Did not know that.
Yeah, you got to read more. And dung beetles are almost extinct throughout much of North America. We had all these species of dung beetles, just like see on Nat Geo or in Africa or something. And it's so cool. I mean, they're the perfect aerator. They go down to about 14 inches, carry dung down there to feed their young, leave a little pencil-sized hole, a little smaller, so water can infiltrate with no compaction, no tractor running over, nothing like that, right? And they're taking fertilizer right in the root zone.
Oh, my gosh, yeah.
Like God created.
The perfect insect.
Here's going to be the perfect fertilizer. Y'all don't do anything. Just sleep because I got it taken care of.
Yeah.
Well, now we have earthworms. Most species are awesome. And when they go forward, something comes out the back end. And they don't eat green vegetation, but if you disc and oxidize all that, it goes away real quick, right? But if you just let that decompose slowly on top of the soil, now check this out. This is so fascinating to me. I learned this from David Brandt, brilliant farmer in Ohio. He just passed away, unfortunately, the other day, car accident. Learned from his own. Come home from Vietnam, couldn't afford the diesel to plow, sold everything they had, all their implements, bought a no-till drill, and 30-plus years of a brilliant career, just mastered it. A lot of mistakes along the way. I mean, a world leader. People from all over the world toured his place. He's one of two places in America, folks. Let me use this to explain to you how quick and how much difference you can make.
Yeah.
He's one of two places in America where the NRCS has come in and reclassified the soil on his side of the fence. In his career, he built about 20 inches of topsoil,
Holy cow.
Whoa.
which all my professors said can't happen, right? 1,000 years for an inch.
In 20 to 30 years.
And by the way, a ton of topsoil is about the thickness of a piece of typing paper per acre. That'd be a ton of soil.
Oh, wow.
So when you see dirt blowing across the road, there's tons leaving that field. When you disc on a windy day, you've probably seen this, and dust is blowing behind there.
Yeah.
And that's your best soil. The lightest, that's your best soil, right? So you're compacting soil. When that disc goes over, you fluff up top, however you got set, 4, 5, 6 inches. But right below that, physics, the tractor's heavy, vibrating, perfect compactor, going forward, pulling something. So it transfers some of its weight to what it's pulling. And that's on narrow, 1/4 inch, 1/8 inch thick disc. That's compacting soil. That's creating what we call a hard pan. And for you doubters, you can test it easy. Get you a 1/2 inch rod, piece of rebar, something's not hollow, maybe a fiberglass electric fence pole, whatever, and just push it down soil. And there's no hard pan. All of a sudden, it just stops. That's the hard pan. Water's not going through it. Plant roots aren't going through it. Nutrients, those deep soil nutrients that plants need, they're not getting access to. That creates J rooting. And I've showed that on my own food plots. You pull a plant up, and root goes down, 2, 3, 4 inches, and it goes sideways.
It goes sideways because it can't go through the hard pan.
Hit the hard pan. Or you're in duck country, and you drive by a rice field, and the rice has been harvested, it's not flooded, and there's water ponding out there because it can't infiltrate in, so the farmer has to irrigate the next year. We can get out of this.
Yeah.
And by the way, for the turkey hunters out there, I'm so rambling. I'm so sorry. I love this. You don't know how much passion I'm about helping people.
This is so fascinating. You have no idea.
Most of y'all never seen a dung beetle. I grew up, you turkey hunted, some farmer would be feeding his cows, you had permission, a little corn in the mix, whatever, and you'd find the cow pies been scratched up most recently. Turkey's using this field, man. I'm hunting here.
Yeah.
Okay? You almost never see it anymore. You rarely see, I challenge you one out there, rarely see where turkeys are scratching cow pies.
Why did the dung beetle disappear?
Because every cow out there's got ivermectin or some parasite medicine going in it, and that comes out a toxic poop pile. And the critters that used to break that down are dead. And a lot of dung beetles on the endangered species list in America because that. And you've seen this. You've seen cow pies out in the pasture. You can throw as a frisbee, just oxidized. That used to never happen. 3, 4, 5, 6 days later, that's gone. Flies, maggots, worms, dung beetles, they turn that into fertilizer.
Just completely absorbed into the soil.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it's a toxic waste site on topsoil. And it's, again, you pick them up throwing like a frisbee, but the cow guy, because it's laying there for a year or two, it's not growing any grass there. We got 80 cows pooping over an acre. Think how much grass you're losing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's covering the ground, and it's not letting sunlight get down.
Yeah, yeah.
That's like I leave a cardboard box in the grass too long, and then my grass is dead. I'm like, dang it, man, why did I leave that there?
I had no idea, A, that we had dung beetles, or B, that cow poop used to actually just go away. Like, I grew up around enough cows from grandparents' property and whatever that you just assumed, and I used to hate it because my four-wheeler would get covered in cow poop.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
That you drive over what you thought was dry, the bottom was wet, and it wasn't. It'd get thrown up all over you.
Yeah.
And I just figured that's how it always has been.
Yeah.
I mean, turkeys, you scratch that stuff up, get the maggots, get whatever corn didn't get processed through the cow, whatever. That was a big thing, scouting for turkeys that way. I mean, that was widely known.
So could you put cows on a property and not give them medicine?
Oh, yeah.
And go backwards in time and keep rebuilding?
People do that. Those
do?
are regenerative ag farmers.
Okay.
And here's what
we were just talking about this, Kyle, regenerative ag.
But what you're doing, you're moving the cows maybe
so
multiple times a day.
In one spot.
Like buffalo. They're just replicating the buffalo again. We're just learning from the past.
Sure.
And then the smarter farmers follow the cattle about 3 days with the chicken wagon. The chickens act as the old migratory birds. They scratch, and by 3 days, the larvae, maggots, can I say maggots? Larvae are big enough that the chickens can eat. You're feeding your chickens protein, right? The chicken turns into something really good coming out the other end, and you're cleaning up all the flies. Chickens are extremely effective at turning waste into something we want to eat. And by the way, those pasture-raised eggs that got no medicine in them, those are high-dollar eggs. So the farmer's selling regenerative grass-fed beef, grass-finished beef for not by pound, just super high dollar. You want it, there's a limited supply.
Yeah.
And then you're filling pasture-raised eggs. You're not using any insecticide, so you're saving money there. You're not planting anything because if the cattle are grazed right, good plants will grow back up to native plants, bluegrass, switchgrass, buffalo grass, gamma grass, all these cool things. We're doing a project here. Here's a spoiler for you.
Here we go.
Here we go.
We like this.
I'm not going to tell you the end result because I don't know it yet.
Okay.
So we're working with Dr. Stefan Van Vliet. Guy's so smart, I shouldn't even say his name, man. I mean, I'm just a lowly deer biologist. This guy's wicked smart. Okay. Utah State used to be at a big East Coast school. Utah State got him out there. And he's one of the world's leading human health nutrition guys. And he studies what we eat. And it's widely known that wild-caught salmon have the best ratio of omega-3s and all this stuff. You know, people can live off wild-caught salmon. It's just super healthy.
Mm-hmm.
He's tested a lot of that, and it's good. But the best meat he's ever tested is axis deer from Hawaii. Now, there were no deer on Hawaii. God made that just a bird sanctuary. Only species of mammal was a bat till man started moving stuff there. Okay? But someone let some axis deer out there long ago to hunt or whatever. They're doing a lot of damage because that habitat wasn't made for deer. But he tested some. They're just eating the native plants in the mountains of Hawaii. Highest quality meat he's ever tested. Because you think about a deer, they eat a little bite of this, a little bite of this. Not in Iowa where they, they eat soybeans or starve, right? Because there's no native vegetation in most of Iowa. Highest meat. So a mutual friend introduced us. I'm talking to him. I said, deer, there's a graph out of a European textbook, and you look at the width of the muzzle and the length of the muzzle, kind of tell how selective feeder are. Like a big elk or buffalo or cow, just give me more. Just give me grass. Give me grass, I'll turn it into meat.
Right.
Deer, they don't digest grass. They don't have the right microbes in their gut, man. You see a deer out in a fescue pasture, they're eating a ragweed or a bit of clover. They're not eating fescue. They can't digest it. Okay? That's a tough one to get people. Well, I see deer out behind my house all the time. You might see me drive by, a place that serves snails, but that doesn't mean I'm eating those rascals. Sure. So, anyway, we're doing a project this fall. We're taking deer from 3 of my study sites here, like the pure gold standard. We have no fertilizer, no herbicide, no nothing like that. Mr. Chris Berry in South Carolina, just getting started, still got weed use, a little bit of herbicide, no fertilizer. And then one of my clients up in Iowa, if it's in a jug, they put it on the land. And we're going to test the quality of that meat from a human consumption point of view. We're all taking 20 deer. This hurts. 2 ounces of the loin, 2 ounces of the liver. They test for over 500 nutritional qualities out of that meat.
Really?
Different compounds, not just NPK, different compounds, different combinations. And I'm so excited.
Man, that's going to be cool.
I'm so excited because I think not only is this going to encourage more people to manage native habitat and good quality food plots without using all the junk out there.
Yeah.
But we need a way to get people to harvest more does because doe harvest is slacking in America. Mm-hmm. We got, every hunter says we need more deer, but in a lot of places we have so many deer that are hurting the habitat, hurting ourselves. And all of a sudden people realize the best meat known on the planet you can put in your mouth. I'm not saying this is true yet because the research is not done, but there's good indication might be from that wild free-ranging deer, not a deer that goes ahead in a corn pile. I'm talking making a living off native groceries.
Yeah.
Could be the best meat you could give your family.
Really?
I remember an old Jeff Foxworthy skit long ago. He put these buck teeth, things in, He had this little whiteboard out there by his old camper in the woods or whatever. So now, I just don't understand this. My wife gets on me going deer hunt, but, I spent what it was, $100 on a new bow and $300 on my lease and, on down the list. And I killed a doe last year that got 50 pounds of meat, and that's the best meat on the planet. I think she should be thankful we're eating the best meat in the neighborhood. We had this little skit. Well, turns out that skit may be true. And maybe we can justify buying that land or doing stuff because we're feeding our family. I'll take that one step further, a little serious note here. So I've had a kidney transplant over 30 years.
Okay.
I'm so blessed in so many ways. My sister gave me a kidney, and finally the meds I take every day killed that. And my, at the time, 19-year-old daughter gave me a kidney, saved my life.
Wow.
So I live that life, folks. I just live it. Why not go for gusto every day? Because you really don't have any stress in your life till you're laying there and you hope it goes beep one more time. That's stress. Mm-hmm. The rest of the stuff is just noise. So, and I've been eating venison as a starving graduate student when I got my transplant all the way to now. Go in my freezer. There's a little bit of venison left from last season. Time to restock that rascal.
Time to get it back full.
And the Mayo Clinic, I go to the Mayo Clinic for my health care, and they tell me every year I meet a dietitian, why are you eating? Well, I primarily eat venison, a couple wild turkeys, some white bass, whatever. Well, that's the best stuff you can eat. I hear this from the Mayo Clinic.
Really?
Yeah.
They confirm that and say that is as
wild
far as
game is going to be, because you think about a deer. They take a bite here, a bite there, a bite there. Cow in the cow lot, it's just only eating what's in the trough. And 3 cows already pooped on what's in the trough. They're not getting a full complement of minerals. So, and our farmland has been dissed to death and all this stuff. Spinach has about 40% less iron in it than it did when the Popeye commercials made that famous.
Yeah.
All these, I don't want to go down, green beans, all these things are not near as nutritious as they used to be when our soil was healthier. And the world leading scientists like Stefan think that a lot of these childhood diseases and stuff we never heard of before are because even though we're eating plenty of calories, we're malnourished. We're not getting that, so you go to the store and you hear this, you buy some synthetic vitamin cooked up in the lab. No, that's not doing it, folks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So phytonutrients are the game. That's what all these world leaders that are way over my head in science world talk about, phytonutrients. And it turns out that if you eat a pasture-raised beef, pasture-finished beef, or a white-tailed deer, or a wild turkey or whatever, you can get the phytonutrients in you without eating the plants. And
pass through the animal.
Yeah.
Through the meat.
And think about a deer eat, 300-400 different plants if they're available. They're getting it all. And I'll point this in one special way. Just a couple years ago, big buck I was trying, he wasn't that big, he's old buck. Old buck I was trying to kill, finally killed him, swoops. The thing outsmarted me for 10 years or 9 years or whatever. And I had a trail camera set right before a season thing. I think that rascal was cutting through here. And sure enough, there he showed up. And there's a Queen Anne's lace. That's an exotic weed. It's not from America. It's considered a weed species. I never known deer to eat it. Never heard it in college. No one ever said, hey, Grant, deer eat Queen Anne's lace. Now, this is right before season, so what's happening, okay? Deer are starting to pump calcium in their antlers. They're built out of protein all summer long, and right before a velvet shed, they start pumping calcium. Mm-hmm. Antlers are about 90% calcium when they're hardened. Calcium and phosphorus ratio. He walks by, just happenstance. There's a Queen Anne's lace, a weed. I thought, rump. Takes 4 or 5 big leaves off this Queen Anne's lace. I see the video. Just by chance, we pulled cards a couple days later. I run out there, pull some leaves right next to where he ate, so probably not the best ones. He's smelling what he needs. He's seeing the sun shine off of it. I'm just pulling random leaves. Send him to a lab. Super high in calcium. Exactly what that buck needed at that day.
Wow.
And that's how deer work.
Mm-hmm.
But you got to have good quality native habitat with a lot of diversity. So in my food plots, I'm always planting at least 8 things or more. The more diversity, the better. For the soil and for the consumer, the deer that eats that.
To give them the options of different nutrients and sources of food and all that. So would you classify what you do as basically regenerative agriculture, but just for wildlife?
Yeah, so it's the same thing,
Okay.
except I've learned from a lot of regen ag guys. Maybe they learned a little something from me. And we call it the release process because regenerative ag at a big scale doesn't work to, guys like me don't own much land or whatever.
Yeah.
Don't have a 40-foot no-till drill, all that stuff. I just stuck on the word the release process because I really feel we're just releasing the soil's potential.
Just releasing what was already there.
Yeah.
And letting it have a chance to come back.
A great book, if you don't believe me yet. It's a good read. If you're a hunter, it's an awesome read. But the first known white buffalo hunter in Kansas was this 17, 18-year-old kid, last name Meese. And he took his buckboard wagon, a couple buddies. The buddies chickened out about first time saw some Native Americans. He kept doing it. He's actually lived through all the buffalo. So sad he was part of that buffalo harvest. And founded the town of Wichita, laid out the streets of Wichita. And the man was a brilliant guy and a smart observer. And he took notes about the plants and the animals he saw. Another little mini Lewis and Clark. Mm-hmm. Talk about encountering Native Americans hiding in stump holes of trees or whatever. It's a fascinating read.
It's his journal.
It's his journal.
Mises' journal.
Yeah. I can send you a link or whatever.
Yes.
You can get on Amazon wherever you buy books, whatever.
Yeah.
Fascinating read. I've recommended this to so many people because firsthand observations of what the prairie was like.
Right.
He talks about on a horse, the grass being as tall as his head when he's on a horse.
Wow.
Man.
And all the diversity of plants and all the elk. You don't think about elk and grizzly bears on the prairie, but they were thick out there. Listen, Clark talked about them too. And all the white-tailed deer and the drains across Kansas. Whitetails are kind of limited to the drains because so many predators. And his observations were fascinating. And so, again, I find the closer we manage deer herds, one of my studies on my PhD prelims, they already know, folks. I'm on the other side of the desk now. We know if you're going to pass or fail. That's just us have an excuse to fail you or making you miserable one last time. It's just how it is. I can be honest. One of my questions was, what was the adult sex ratio and age structure of white-tailed deer pre-European settlement? And that's when I knew they wanted to fail me.
That's quite the question.
Yeah. How can you answer that?
Yeah, seriously.
I mean, I literally cried. Okay, well, might as well go down swinging.
I
So
guess
go
I'm
to
going to fail.
Yeah. 4 years of my life, you fail.
Gone.
Yeah. So I go to the library, start digging. Well, archaeologists had dug up Indian trash heaps. We call them middens. They were just a trash heap outside an Indian camp. When it got stinking, they throw another layer of dirt on there to keep the scent down. And archaeologists had uncovered, I found records of, from Florida to North Dakota, about 10,000 pelvic girdles out of whitetail deer. Records. I didn't find the pelvic girdles. I found the records.
Yeah.
Well, you can sex a deer based on pelvic girdle very accurately. And you can put them in, fawn, yearling really accurately, 2, 3, 3, 4, 5, what I call management age classes. So I rebuilt, I don't know anyone ever done that, but I rebuilt what was the sex ratio and egg structure of whitetail deer pre-European settlement.
Wow.
And their bucks and does, I didn't find many fawn records because you think about that, fawn pelvic girdle hadn't calcified, so it decomposed.
Oh, because it's still growing. It's still soft.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I knew they were out there because I kept having all these 2 and 3, 4-year-olds. That all, you had to have fawns somehow, folks.
Sure.
So rebuilt that deer herd, and the adult sex ratio was about 50-50.
Wow.
Harvested sex ratio. Now you think about it. These are primitive weapons, no ozone, no G5 broadhead. These are primitive weapons, and they still harvested 50% bucks, 50% does, and their average buck was 3 years old or older.
Wow.
Because that was what was on the landscape. That's what was here. Now, I'm not saying they were magic managers or, some romantic tale. That's just what was here. And they were healthy because the habitat was so healthy.
Man, that is cool.
I have kind of an anecdote, and I want to see if you agree with it or don't. So it kind of leads into a question, I guess. But Kyle and I are always talking back and forth about, especially our generation. We do a podcast, but we also hunt and fish and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
It's what is going to get what's going to get the next generation of outdoorsmen and women to get excited about conservation and hunting and fishing and heritage and all that kind of stuff. And we were talking with Austin Booth of Arkansas Game and Fish, and that's where we'd heard, maybe officially from Game and Fish for the first time, that it was the game species of waterfowl and game species of mammals that are, they're keeping,
It was like
what's the word?
It was like all these bird species are disappearing off the landscape, but the waterfowl,
That's what it was.
where it's treasured, where you have these organizations stood up around to protect these animals.
They're flourishing. They're growing.
Yeah.
And then now you're talking about how maybe the best food you can be eating if vegetables aren't cutting it anymore because we have pesticides and insecticides on them, and then your cows and your mega farms and all of that. The best you can be eating is native critters,
free-ranging wildlife.
Free-ranging wildlife of native deer and all of that, turkey. Is there a world, and this is kind of the question, I'd see if it makes sense, is there a world in which kind of the revitalization of hunting and the outdoor lifestyle kind of gets married and merged to where game species are being intentionally cared for because modern man gets to a place where it's actually the best thing to be eating? And we kind of see a resurgence of that lifestyle.
I think we're
question.
trending that way. I don't know if, we got 350 plus minus million people in America. That, deer would get really skinny pretty quick around here, right? So not sure that's the total answer, but as far as retaining hunters, let's be really clear about this. Depending on which study you read, whatever. In America, there's all these numbers, but let's take the middle. About 5% of us buy a hunting license. We're not going to do it by voting. That's totally a fantasy. That will never happen again. Okay, in my mind. So it has to be fun. It has to be beneficial. And how we have done this to the point, I'm sure you all know the Pittman-Johnson Act and Dingell-Johnson, Pittman-Robson, all this stuff. So during COVID, we saw this huge uptick in hunting and fishing.
Right.
People were inside, I want to go outside, and a lot of them found out it was fun. Now it's our job to retain those. You probably heard of R3, retain, recruit. And then we spent all these millions and millions taking youth hunting, and it sounds so good and it's great, but you're taking a 10-year-old kid hunting, he goes hunting once, has a great time, she has a great time, hey, buddy, yeah, it's great. They can't go buy a bow or gun or go to the next week by themselves. So what good groups, NDA, National Deer Association, have found out is we need to be recruiting these 20-year-olds. They got a budget. Hopefully they got a job. Got a budget. They can make decision to go hunting next year if they liked it. And meat is a big play for them. That's called field to fork. I call it fork to field. Let's feed them first, teach them about the health, and then take them to the field. But
here's where you go get this.
That's where we're seeing the most success. And I'm talking downtown Louisville, Kentucky. I'm not being mean, folks. I'm just super candid. People that you might not look at and stereotypically say that's a hunter. It's hard to camouflage purple hair. I'm just being facetious, okay? That's not a hunter. And then giving them a free good meal, explaining health benefits, usually introducing them with a crossbow. It doesn't go bang real loud, doesn't have a lot of recoil. The yardage is limited. It's easy to teach people to use that safely and effectively. And those programs are limited by budget and instructors, but they're super successful. And then they can have kids and make them hunters. I think we're barking up their own tree. And a lot of groups, I won't call their names out here because they probably won't admit it in public yet. I haven't quite bought into this, but we've spent millions and millions taking kids hunting. Great intentions, a lot of great times, I'm sure. But they can't, there's a real low recruitment rate. This is statistically proven. But when we take young adults or even older adults, maybe they used to hunting, there's a really high percent, we can recruit them back into being a hunter. And we need hunters to manage wildlife and to fund wildlife. Wildlife management is expensive. And you said it best earlier, and we take care of what we appreciate, what we feel we need. We don't really feel we need clean water, really, because we pollute it like crazy, right? We don't feel we need to recycle because you about got to beat people to recycle, and that's one of the easiest things we can do for the planet. So it's got to have value. And I was taught this way back in undergrad school. We need to conserve the wise use of a resource. A lot of people think preserve, which is setting it aside. When we set critters aside, they don't last too long. We got to conserve.
So to wrap it all up, I'm going to ask you a question. Why do you do what you do? The work that you do, the education that you promote, the channel that you run, everything that you've done, what is it that drives you to do those things?
This sounds like some romantic, whimsical thing, but it's not. It's that 6-year-old boy being so fascinated by seeing that dead deer. I can remember my dad was a real strong man, much stronger than me, and we drug it up to the pig house. I just knew he was going to skin it out, and I was going to put it on my bedroom wall. Mom had a different plan, of course, so it got nailed up in the barn. The only thing we knew about tanning was Epsom salt. Rub some salt on that
Put
thing.
some salt on it.
Yeah. Nailed it up to the barn. I'd do my chores. I think the right word might be fantasize. I'd go out there and, rub the hair. Got brittle, fell off after a while, but
Yeah,
I might see one of these in the wild someday. And that hunger, it didn't come easy. I was 18 before I harvested my first deer as a button buck. So proud of that deer. But I hunted for years. No one in my family was harvesting deer. We just had that drive to go.
Yeah.
Instill that drive and appreciation. And from what I've been blessed to learn, we can do a better job taking care of the habitat. We can get rid of all the nitrates running down the river. I'm sure y'all know it, a hypoxia zone. Well, I'm pro-farming, folks, as much as anyone on this planet, but that's farmer caused. That's nitrates from nitrogen fertilizer leaching out of soil. We can clean that up. Over every ton, over every acre on the planet, there's over 30 tons of nitrogen in the air. We breathe in all the time. We just got to plant some legumes in our rotation and put that nitrogen in soil and stop plowing that causes us to go back up. So what drives me, I think we can have a better planet. We can, and it's not complicated. We don't have to have some magic, in the deep lab, carbon vacuum. We know that plants will pull more carbon out of the air and put it deep in the soil profile than they release if we're not disking all the time. Deep in the soil profile, 50 inches down, 60 inches down. Good soil's black, we all know that. Well, carbon's black.
Yeah.
When you see a gray field, that's because the carbon's gone. We just got to take it out of the air, put it back in the dirt. We can't get rid of carbon because plants, that's C6, 6 carbons, H12O6, the recipe for photosynthesis, the product. 6 carbons. Plants die if we don't have carbon, folks. We just got to put it back where it belongs.
Yeah.
So that passion to help people understand these simple processes, not make it complicated, have fun deer hunting. I get caught up in big buck bubba land every now and then myself, I like to grow big deer. I like to watch them. I don't kill that many. I think big deer are just a sign of healthy habitat. Use that as an indices. Body weights are just as thrilling to me. Oh, gosh, that doe weighed 190 pounds. Things are cooking out here.
You geek out over the body weights, too.
I do, big time.
I bet you do.
I do, yeah. And I also called Daniel to help me drag him up the hill, but yeah.
As you should.
Yeah.
As you should.
Yeah, that passion.
Yeah.
It's the passion.
No, that makes sense. Well, at the very least, you've got me excited. I mean, I'm thinking about how can I fill my freezer and feed my family high quality meat from animals that I've already spent the money on the gear and the bow and all the stuff. Basically, at this point, it's gas to get out
Put
and
'em
get
in the
after
freezer.
them. And so you got me looking forward to season already.
Well, and I love that we went from first trail cameras, scrape and rub research to growing deer to, no, we can help the planet with this stuff. Like if people think hunters don't matter or outdoorsmen don't matter, I think they're wrong. I mean, I know I'm
the most
speaking in an
they're
echo
wrong.
chamber here, but it's,
We all
it's
agree,
true. We
sure.
can actually not just make an impact on your little property where you live, but you can make every stream you'll ever interact with healthier again, or every lake and every part of the woods. And it's just human flourishing. I mean, it's philosophical. I know we went there, but it's like, that gets me excited.
Maybe help solve or reduce some childhood diseases because we're feeding our kids a little better, right?
Mm-hmm.
Which all starts in the womb. That starts with prenatal health. Mm-hmm. I have 2 daughters. My wife and I have lived through all this.
Yeah.
I didn't know all this stuff at that time. Wish I would have, but I still raised them on venison, so they've turned out okay.
There you go.
We can all do better, folks. And I'm going to end my part with this. I've been blessed to work all over. I personally don't think I've ever seen a property at its full potential. Soil-wise, production-wise, we're still degraded. And watching those little incremental changes at Chris's place in South Carolina, we're growing a black layer on top of that red clay. South Carolina average losing 17 inches of topsoil during cotton farming days. I'm not that guy that's mad. They didn't know any better. Just trying to make a living. Get over it, folks. We're way past that.
Yeah.
But we can regenerate that soil. We can do so much more. We can clean up our streams. We can stop the invasive eastern red cedar, Johnson grass. We should learn, right? Stop moving invasive species. That doesn't work. I mean, no one's mad at pheasants, but there's very few examples where we brought a critter from one planet or a plant from one continent to another and it worked out well. Mm-hmm. There are very few examples, but there's a lot of catastrophes. And we can do it just working together. It's not a money thing. It's just working together.